So many of my messages are people, just publicists trying to get me a blue like verification star, whatever. And it's like, I don't care. Like, who cares?
$1,000.
Yeah. Oh, they want like 30 grand. Like those things go for so much money. Like, and they like set you and people pay for it. And like, I know people who've done it, and it's like, why?
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Blitz Growth. Super excited for our guest today. If you have a second, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know if you're enjoying these or not. Really helps us understand what you guys like, what you guys don't. But today, I really wanted to, introduce you to Benn Jordan. So Ben has got many, many talents, and he's also known as the Flashbulb on Wikipedia. One of the few guests that we've had that actually has a Wikipedia page, which is very impressive. And today we're going to go over and learn how he built an 800 plus Patreon membership, has over 1 million Spotify listeners, has 150,000 YouTube followers doing music gear reviews. And then somehow on top of all of that, he also produces music and is a scientist. So Ben, Thank you so much for joining.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, when I was doing research for this episode, was so impressed about how many things you're doing. And I really wanted to kind of ask you the question, and we do to a lot of these guests, like, how do you introduce yourself at whether it's a party or it's a meetup, or what do you kind of say your main things are and the value that you usually provide?
It's one of the hardest conversations to have, I think. Like, if I even 15 years ago or something, if I was sitting on a plane next to somebody and they asked me what I did, and I'd say I was a musician, and then they'd be like, oh, what kind of music? And then it just opens this because people categorize everything and they quantify everything into different things. Or like just right before we started this podcast, I said that, people are always like, what kind of scientist are you? And it's like, well, everything is connected in a lot of ways. And so it's, when you go down a rabbit hole, you cross a lot of different genres. And so it's interesting because I feel like, as an arrogant answer, I would say I do whatever I want. And that's kind of the truth. Like, I kind of just do whatever I want. And then a lot of times I look at things when it comes to somebody asking me what I don't want to do, it's almost a little bit like prostitution. Like, I'm just like, well, I'm going to ask for an absurd amount of money. And if they pay that, then I'll do it. Usually they won't, and they'll just say you're crazy. Sometimes they do. And then, or I'll shift it, or I'll, a lot of times something will come along. And I think I'm getting better now with YouTube, with having a YouTube channel and stuff, and having a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more control over, when you start out, it's basically will give you something for free if you do a video on it. And now there's a lot more room for negotiation. And so, yeah, with a lot of brands, that they'll want me to do something, and I'll just be like, well, if I can make a video that's interesting to me, then sure. But most of the time that's very difficult, especially if it's like Manscaped or something. It's like there's no possible way I could make meaningful content with like a brand about shaving pubic hair. So, that's.
Oh, I love that. And okay, so this is kind of delving into the creator economy sort of realm. And I know this is kind of how I found you, was definitely through some of your YouTube stuff that you'd been doing. So, when did you kind of start YouTube? When did you realize that this was a platform that you could actually start generating an income from and turn it into a business? So how long have you been doing YouTube for? How long did it take you to kind of get to that first, let's say $1,000 in revenue from the platform?
Yeah, I was a musician first. I was a musician since the late 90s. And I was a professional musician probably from the year 2000 or so. The first years were obviously, a lot of, digging for change in couch cushions and stuff. But YouTube, I started in 2017, I believe. Yeah, 2017. And my goals are very interesting, I guess, just different than what most people's are when they start a YouTube channel. I kind of was like, well, it's a place where like my followers for music can, I guess, hear from me, because I was kind of, I guess, I moved to Georgia. I was living in the woods. I really didn't have much of a presence anymore. And I embraced that for a bit and like made a lot of art and, made an album. But then I was like, okay, well, I got to learn how to talk a little bit better because I'm stuttering too much because I literally have not speaking to people. And also some free synthesizers and stuff would be cool as well. So maybe I'll just start a YouTube channel and see where that goes. And so I had the initial bump of a few thousand followers just from people who, were reading my tweets or, whatever else. But yeah, it got out of control pretty fast. Like I took a lot of breaks in the beginning, and then I realized that consistency in like 2020 when the pandemic hit, all my shows were canceled. I didn't pretty much a lot of my sources of income dried up. I ran a record label, nonprofit record label, and I had an album come out like literally the day before they shut London down. And, and so not only that, but like running a record label and running my own, I'm very into running everything myself. And so running my own like shipping center, everything was being held at customs and then sent back or just destroyed. And so, that was just a massive, I lost a lot of money on a physical release of an album, which I guess I was happy about in a way, because it was like, oh, this is the end of CDs. That's great. Now everything can be digital. So yeah, then I just went full time into YouTube, and I don't want to say full time, but I guess, one video a week was my minimum for a year. And at the end of that year, I started a Patreon account, which a lot of people were asking for. Like a lot of people are like, you should start a Patreon so we could chip in or so we could do this. And the Patreon just kind of really, the community is amazing. Like I wish I could say I did more with it. Like in terms of like, I wish I could say, oh, I set up this whole Discord thing and I set up but it's all their ideas and it's all their development and everything else. So that's really the gem of it.
So some crazy learnings there. So you shifting away from physical, streams of revenue, going into digital, mostly through YouTube, mostly through, sounds like Spotify for distribution as well.
Yeah.
Lots of listeners there, and then monetization through, Patreon and that sort of thing. But what was really interesting is that you were saying that you listen to your fans a lot. So how did that start? Are they just emailing you, telling you these things? Are you asking like in groups, or are you asking kind of like your top fans or something? How are these ideas kind of getting executed?
The type of music that I made or make, but especially the type I made 15, 20 years ago or whatever, there were a lot more British artists than American artists. And those British artists were very detached from their fans, and they wouldn't do interviews. And that was kind of the thing. Like they were mysterious, and they, were these geniuses who did this. And I think when MySpace came around and other things, at that point already, I was like, I want to be the opposite of that. I want to be approachable. I want to be, and not for any sort of strategic reason, but like people are interesting. Everybody's interesting. They all have really interesting stories and you can learn from them. And so that's basically the motivation behind it. Is I just love meeting my fans. Like not even I don't want them to talk about me the entire time when I meet them at a conference or show, or, even if sometimes just walking around daily life. I love just hearing about what they do and what they're up to and what they're an expert in and all that stuff. So I think it's just kind of came naturally. I can't respond to every email or every comment, but I do read them, and I do, so I would say that probably started. The YouTube thing wasn't really listening to fans as much as just me being like, I need to, have a little bit more of a personal presence and speak more. And the comments were just there. And, sometimes on Reddit, I would do AMAs, things like that.
Nice. Okay. So you still were actively trying to connect with the audience, whereas I think a lot of content creators want to just create their content and hope that it, gets picked up and everybody loves it. And in the reality is, I think when we interview, a lot of these content creators, they do put a lot of work into connecting with their fans, learning what they like, learning what they don't like. Okay. Interesting. Well, and then I think people make the mistake of, I think a lot of people make the mistake of sort of stepping up a step or something from their audience, which makes sense because they see a lot of creators as, I guess they look at it like a hierarchy, and, it's like the most popular person, like Jake Paul would be on top of that food chain or whatever, but it's like,
you don't really want to live in a world where Jake Paul's on top of the food chain, do you? And so, not, I mean, and so it's kind of, it's a weird way to look at things. And I think people really do just want, homophily is a thing, and people want to pay attention to, like, if you want a lot of followers, then be like those, be on the same level as those followers. Like, don't put yourself up, because that works for some people, but for most people, they just want somebody that they can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then would you say your main platforms were YouTube, or you kind of mentioned Reddit and Twitter? Were they big parts of growing your audience, which led to your YouTube followers and then also led to your Patreon fans?
I think YouTube is probably where most of the positivity comes from. I would say, like, Twitter's just kind of terrible all the time. Like, everybody's horrible on Twitter. It's just a bunch of anonymous accounts saying terrible things to each other at all times.
I feel like that's almost Reddit too.
Yeah, Reddit has definitely become that, because I remember Reddit when people would be like, "Hello, fellow Redditor," but now it's it's become that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, YouTube is definitely where the meaningful content comes, and Discord as well. One part of my Patreon is you can join, like, the Discord and get access to previous live streams and stuff, but you could join the Discord for $1, and all this stuff is like $1. And the reason it's $1 is because no troll is going to keep paying $1 and then getting banned. And, so it's pretty much affordable for anybody except for somebody who is going in with ill intent. And as a result, there's never, to this day, there's not been a troll on the server yet. And there's, almost, I think there's about 800 people on it. And so that's, I mean, that works very well to keep it friendly and nice.
And I know that one of the hard parts about, creating these memberships or these areas that are kind of members only is how you keep them engaged, how you keep it, people logging in every day. What are some things you do to keep your Discord engaged or keep your Patreon fans engaged? Because that's super important.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I feel like for any creator, obviously the number one thing that piece of advice that you've probably heard from anybody who's had success in this territory is just keep creating. Like, even if you don't think it's the best idea, don't just stop on one thing, or don't get discouraged by, criticism. Just keep creating, and because you keep throwing things at the wall, and one thing is going to stick, and that's going to bring more people in, and then they're going to pay attention to you in the future. But as far as the engagement, the constant engagement thing, as a musician, that's a lot more difficult, because musicians generally just release an album every couple of years. And one thing that I've, started dealing with, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, is every time I'd release an album, I'd look at some social media comments, or I'd look at, comments to an article about it or something, and people would say, "Oh, he's still making music. That's awesome." Like it's as if they completely forgot that I was, a thing. They thought that I, became a nurse or something. I'm not sure what they thought that I did, but it was very interesting, because it was like, why would I not, like, I'm in this for life. And interestingly enough, as we're talking about the CDs not selling anymore, or, the CDs losing money, I was really excited about that, because I do think that having physical albums is the reason why musicians are kind of stuck in this loop of only engaging when they have this physical medium coming out. And we've sort of translated that over to iTunes and Spotify, where we don't need it anymore. And so everything that I make now literally goes on my website and on GitHub, and it's a living album. I just make it and I upload it, and as often as somebody wants to check it, they'll hear new material. If they want to, if they're a musician, they can take the files and do what they want. And it's kind of a new approach to that, where I'm kind of sick of albums. I'm sick of releasing these tombstones that, I'd much rather do it almost like software, where you have a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and so on. And so for engagement,
one song at a time sort of thing.
Yeah. And I might change it and I might delete it, but, just like software, in a GitHub or something, you could always go back, and if you like the old version of it, you could listen to that one. There is no, and Spotify is just not invited to this party. They don't pay enough, so they don't get a ticket.
Got it. Okay, interesting. And then wait, so on GitHub, there's a compensation model?
No, but basically through Patreon and through licensing and things like that, it actually it's so far it's working out. But I think further down the road, one thing that I've been putting a lot of time and energy into so far is a kind of a decentralized music streaming platform that is kind of the same model that you would have with Spotify or Tidal, except that it's impossible to have a Daniel Ek or somebody. It's impossible to have investors that make profit. Basically, the system stays running, and the rest of the money goes to royalties to the musicians. And so that's just been a huge. It's been interesting to get away from all of the middlemen in that. Like the biggest challenges. Like Apple, for example, is just, I've talked to reps from Apple and been like, can we get a lower rate? Because you guys take 30%, say at the lowest 25. Yeah. And they're like, no, Google has been better about it. They've been like, if you're a nonprofit organization, we could work with you and, essentially give you everything. And so I'm like, okay, then I'll set up a 501c3 and we'll be a nonprofit. And so I don't know if this is going to, I don't expect this to replace Spotify, but I expect it to inspire other services or other developers to do the same thing. And that's the goal, is to try and help music get to the next generation, because it is starving right now.
Yeah, it is one of those industries that is kind of needing a bit more disruption, I suppose, because it's still pretty old school in the way that royalties are handled and music artists brought up, promoted, and then who's actually getting paid for, what the output is.
There's never been a point in my career where I've been the person making the most money off of my music, which is like harrowing, right? Like, and
that is crazy to think of. Yeah.
I am like the Edward Norton of like the influencer space. Like, I'm really hard to work with. I demand a lot of money for things. I like value myself, but I tell everybody else to value themselves as much as possible. Yet still somehow I am like not over that 49-50% mark over how much money somebody's making over my work that I made. Yeah.
Do you think that is getting better though, with the inclusion of, YouTube commissions and then Patreon memberships and that sort of stuff? Are you feeling like it's going in the right direction and you're getting more percentage of that? Or do you still feel like that it's broken without this kind of system that you're building, which is kind of decentralized and profits are all paid out in royalties versus shareholders?
It's interesting because a lot of people, I mean, one of the most common questions I get is, what is your advice for somebody starting in the music, to make a living off music or to be a professional musician? And I don't have an answer for them anymore. Like I used to just say, keep making music, stop worrying about your press photos, stop worrying about your band name, just keep making music. And eventually more and more people listen. That organically works. But now you'll have a lot of people listening to, but the last time I checked, in 4 years, Spotify cut the amount per stream that they pay by 60%. And so, I mean, I have somewhere around 1 million individual listeners per year, which is mind blowing to me. Like, I can't even imagine, oh my God, like 1 million people are listening to my music. I would have never dreamed in my life that would be a thing. And I'm making somewhere around like 25,000 a year off Spotify, which is just pathetic. That's just like, and this month I haven't been paid yet. They're like, I just literally was like doing my accounting this morning and it was like, oh, Spotify didn't pay me. They were supposed to pay me 3 weeks ago. And that's normal. McDonald's can't do that at McDonald's. Get your check every 2 weeks. And so it's really, really bad. And so a lot of times I have to say, right, now I don't have an answer other than, well, I guess you have to start a YouTube channel and be an Instagram influencer as well. And you just can't make music anymore. You have to do it all, which is a bit tragic, I think, because it takes away from the music. And it's also being, I can only imagine, just from close friends of mine and doing research into this, being a woman or a person of color in this space where you're talking to a camera and stuff, it's as a friend Adam Neely said, there's force multipliers where like every single critique just is multiplied because of, you know, obvious problems that we have. And so that's very difficult to say to like, it's a much harder conversation when you have that with a female producer, because they have the challenge of like, well, what should I wear? Should I wear something revealing to increase viewers? Will that work? But then they'll respect me less. And it's just this whole incredibly difficult thing to navigate psychologically that, yeah, depresses me a bit.
Well, I suppose that is the other thing. People don't even think about, like, when they set up a YouTube channel, the implications of like, you know, audio, visual, like all of these things need to align for it to be good enough content to get, you know, ranked, viewed, shared, all that sort of stuff. Whereas, you know, when you only had to release one album, like you could focus on making that sound amazing. And then that was what you'd have to do like once every, you know, 1 or 2 years. Yeah. And that was it. Whereas now, as you were saying, it's kind of like a very well-produced video every single week. So
and the cost of entry is crazy too, because people always talk about like synthesizers and my modular, and they're like, oh man, I could never spend that much money. Oh, how do you get that? And it's like, dude, you should, my cameras and lenses, like photography and videography is incredibly expensive to get into. Like, yeah, you know, just, my camera gear is potentially worth more than my music gear, which is kind of insane considering, you know, where I'm sitting right now. But
that is crazy, actually. Anyway, let's pivot to maybe the YouTube content that you're producing.
Sure.
So how come you decided to start doing reviews on products? Did that naturally happen? Did you kind of go after it and that's what you wanted to create the channel around? How did that develop, and how did you decide to kind of go into the product review sort of niche?
So right in the beginning, I was like, you know, I guess music gear, I guess a review channel would be good. And I'm a professional musician where most of the people doing this aren't. And so that could be where I fit into this ecosystem. Like maybe there's a little bit more of an experience on my back from touring and from doing all these things. And so maybe I could, you know, add that. I don't look at anything as competition in the creator space on YouTube or something like that. I look at it as like, where can I fit that isn't already, you know, already being done? And if I do overlap, that's fine. I'm very happy to do that. So it started that, and then I did a few bad reviews, and immediately, you know, and one of them, well, two of them, like in the beginning, they actually damaged small companies. Like, people love bad reviews so much that, you know, they just fit into the algorithm. And when you search these products, one of the first things you see, like literally the first or second link, is my bad review from years ago. And as my channel grows, that bad review grows. And, you know, my first instinct is, well, if you make a bad product, you deserve a bad review, you know, fair enough. But at the same time, it's like, well, maybe I should start doing features instead of bad reviews. And maybe rather than complaining about something, it's better to show somebody cool. If I'm putting all this time into something every week, maybe it's better to be like, here's something awesome that I found. And you can just make up your mind with everything else. But I mean, so I started doing features. And then after that, I think I just wanted to break out of that really badly. And I'm not sure where I got the confidence to do it, but I was like, I want to talk about why there are so few females in music production. And I want to actually do a science deep dive into that and talk to, you know, everything from neuroscientists to philosophers. I want to do something. I did one on Spotify on like the economics of like a balanced view of it. And then just kept moving out to science and more things like that. And that's really where the channel took off. That's the niche, I guess, is where I guess educational content, for lack of a better term, ballsy educational content that maybe other content creators are scared that they might lose some subscribers or some brand deals or something like that.
Interesting. That's great. So I think a few things there. So one, you know, the bad reviews sound like they outrank the good reviews, and everybody's making good reviews. So one bad review stands out.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting.
And they're funnier.
And then,
You know, they're more entertaining to watch generally. Like they just are. But at the same time, it's like they're not all that useful. It just becomes kind of brain candy, I guess. Like you just, you know.
Well, that's most of the internet.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay. And then you kind of pivoted to almost making more kind of like data-driven, you know, science-based, data-backed videos about certain topics or issues within the music industry. And then how far into the science sort of stuff did you go? Did you still kind of keep it around audio and music, or did you get even deeper than that?
I think the last science video I made was, you know, I did a fun, I mean, I think it's my most seen video at this point. And I think I used kind of a funny trick where it was how the world sounds like to animals. But what it was really about is like temporal time perception and how every different species experience time differently. But, you know, the entryway to that is like, I'm an audio guy. Here's how the world sounds to animals. But, you know, once you actually watch the video, then, you know, it's way cooler than that. And same thing with, I think another video I did that did really well was how loud can sound get? Like, is there a peak to, you know, how loud sound can get? But, you know, the whole thing is generally about pressure waves and how sound works, and therefore a lot of just how physics works. And so I think after those last two, I don't think it would be too much of a jump if I just did a video on, I don't know, you know, some anomaly or, you know, I do really want to get into particle physics and what reality is and things like that. And so I feel like I'm probably in a place where I could springboard to that now.
Wow. Okay. So your channel has developed a lot over the years then, in the type of content you create. And then do you find, like, why do you think people are watching your videos over others that are like doing similar topics? Or do you find that nobody's really doing these similar topics and you're just going so deep and like narrow in what your topic is that there's nobody else is touching on that?
I mean, I feel like most science YouTube stuff is a little dry, and there's a very, very careful balance you have to make, and controversial videos too, like one about, you know, why there are so few females in music production. Like that is such a tightrope because you have to remain objective and you have to remain scientific. You can't stray from that, even if you don't like or even if you know that like people aren't going to like it. And so one thing that I try to do, I think, like the magic trick that I work with a lot of these videos is I make sure that I'm emphasizing words correctly. Like a lot of times I'll write like a script. I won't read directly from the script, but I will highlight words in the script because it's almost like I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's almost like singing or something. It's like certain words. Yeah, it's like the difference between like a mumble rapper and Eminem or something, you know, like Eminem, like he gets angry and like you feel that and therefore you listen to it more. And so trying to do, and I'm already kind of a fast talker. And so trying to do that inside the fast talking delivers a lot of meaningful information pretty quickly. And then, so if it's something very boring, I use a lot of on-screen prompts. I try to change up everything. A couple of years ago, I used to try and change one element every 20 seconds. Now it's like down to 7. Like now one element has to change: where I'm standing, you know, where I am in the camera, the background music, the LUT filter on the screen, the lighting. One of those things has to change every 7 seconds. Otherwise, that's been like, I feel like I could probably pull off 5. Like I feel like 5 is probably the limit before it gets too, you know, starts looking like blippy or something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's just one of the things that keeps the brain focused on something, which is, it's kind of crazy that there's a whole science to that. But
yeah, that's really interesting that you've been one of the few people that we've interviewed that have actually broken it down like that and had a formula for like, okay, something needs to change every 7 seconds. All right, we need to have this prompt in the script. I think it sounds like you're very, very planned when you create these videos, which might also add to the success of them. You found an engagement formula almost.
Yeah. But, a lot of times too, I mean, I tried a lot of things and a lot of things failed. I made a lot of videos that are, well, it's really funny because I'm just going off of what other people, especially other creators, who are much larger than me, have just said, this is outstanding material, and it has 6,000 views. Like, the algorithm killed it. For some reason, it's just failing. And for a while, I really kind of focused on that and was like, what is the problem? What, is it the thumbnail? Well, what's happening with this video? Like, videos were like, I've risked my life, right? Like, where I've gone, and you probably didn't see them because it's so far buried, but there's one, for example, I did one earlier this year, the beginning of this year. I went down to Apalachicola in Florida and essentially like got lost in the ocean while trying, like, just crazy thing. Another one, like, I was in a boat with gators for 3 days, like, recording ambient soundscapes. And they all did really terrible, even though they're probably the most engaging content I've ever made. And so
definitely the most unique.
and so it's, yeah. And it's very, very difficult to, and also, like, part of the video, like, the whole reason I'm doing it is to archive sound without human noise pollution, which is like really, and so that ends up going to like a free archive. And so, it's for a good cause as well. Why they didn't work, I still don't know. I don't care anymore. Like, I just don't. Like, if it interrupts me making things, then it's time to stop thinking about it. And because by the time I figure out the YouTube algorithm, it'll change again. And it's probably changed 3 times or 4 times since my channel began. So
yeah.
In big ways.
Yeah. How long have you actually been running your channel?
Yeah, I think since 2017. I think that's when I started it. And it was just all gear stuff until probably 2019. And then I did, just out of nowhere, I did a neurofeedback video. I did a video on vinyl and the toxicity of vinyl, and and so those things kind of gave me a little bit of a push to step outside of the audio gear world. So,
got it. And did you find that it sounds like you have a core group of Patreon highly engaged fans, ride or die sort of people that you're with. Mm-hmm. Did that change as you shifted your content, or do you find that it's still those early viewers, watchers, and engagers that are still watching your content now, but the type of content they watch has just changed along with you?
I feel like when I had 70,000 subscribers, I had about 800 Patreon members, or, maybe 750 or something. And with 150,000, I still have the same amount of Patreon members. So I do think it's kind of you kind of realize that Patreon's probably a really good metric to realize where your ceiling is with the content that you're making. And I would say that if somebody just happened to see, like, the animal time perception video, and then they join my Patreon, not being a musician or not being a creator themselves, they probably would, they might be happy to support me, but they probably wouldn't be involved with the community, which has like monthly songwriting challenges and a whole developer section and game server. Well, they have game servers, so I mean, that'd be nice. But one thing about that, though, that I've been talking about more and more with friends of mine who work in the audio gear industry is that one of the big things about expanding and then sometimes returning home is that if it inspires people to make music, or if it inspires people to start talking to people in that community, then that makes me feel really accomplished. Like, if I could get somebody to actually get off the fence and make music for the first time, then I feel like, my entire platform's done its job. So that's more important than money or anything else. Pardon?
That's your North Star goal. It's like, out of all the content I'm creating, my one thing that would make me happy out of all of this is that someone watches it, someone listens to it, and then they start a career or they start a hobby in creating music.
That never was like, I don't think I ever thought that until somebody told me that, or until I read the comments that say that. And then I'm like, oh, this is actually the most validating of it all, more so than money or likes or anything like that, is knowing that, you've created this butterfly effect into the future where now you have more creators creating things, and whether or not they're successful doesn't matter, just because to me,
enjoyment of it.
Yeah, to me, being a musician or being a creator is really the best feeling in the world. So
yeah, it's super interesting. And I suppose, does that help you make decisions on, whether you publish certain things, the type of content you create, or maybe the type of brands that you work with?
Yeah.
Does that North Star goal kind of affect all of that, or do you just not really think about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back in 2012 in Chicago, I ran a nonprofit music school. And then I've been involved with like nonprofit things for quite some time with that. And there have been like some companies that are kind of toxic to certain creators, and they're divisive. Behringer is one of them. I feel like everybody involved with anything in creation owns a piece of Behringer gear. But yeah, I mean, the CEO of that company was acting like, I don't want to swear, but his actions are just deplorable, and calling them out actually made a big difference. He probably, he's probably wouldn't agree, or I'm not sure, but he ended up donating over $200,000 to children's music charities. He ended up giving thousands of synthesizers away to children. And generally the point of the video, a lot of people just see it as like a hate video, or just me crapping on somebody. But really the point of the video was like, I have Behringer gear. I don't want to feel edgy for having Behringer gear. I just want to use it to make something. And I do love the idea of affordable music gear. Like, it's great. So why does that have to come with this with this nasty thing where it's like, oh, you also have this company that's doing a bunch of toxic things just to promote themselves. And so I think it kind of made a difference, because it was a very popular video, and I think it kind of made a difference. And again, that's huge, because that means that more people can, buy this gear more guilt-free, if it changes the behavior of the company, or if the company redeems themselves. And then, because one thing that I absolutely hate too is there being a financial gate between somebody and them creating, that's terrible. So
yeah, that barrier to entry for being a creator.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's dropped though. Don't you think? It's
dropped. There's a lot of products that cost a lot of money in my world that that are just absurd amounts of money. Every now and then I just can't help myself, and I'm like, this thing is just so cool and boutique and odd. I have to, even though it costs $4,000. But usually that's a big factor on if I cover something or not. It's like, is this affordable? If it's not, then maybe not today, So
yeah. No, it's very interesting hearing how you've kind of progressed, how your content has changed, how you've got those core set of followers or fans or Patreon people, and then how you really have kind of like an end goal that helps you guide you through all of this, because you're doing so many different things. So I'm sure it's easy to get lost, or easy to have that shiny object syndrome. But coming back to that number one goal is probably one of the main reasons you've been pretty successful in a lot of your content creation.
Yeah, I think for anybody who's doing any content creation, I mean, I used to think this was only music, but now I'm starting to realize it's everywhere, that a lot of people get into music and they would expect to like have a moment where they would get signed, or a big hit where they would become a star, or something like that. And then that would launch their career. But all too often that just creates like a big peak and valley. And you just have a moment that you didn't really build up to organically. And then you don't know how to handle yourself when you're there. You don't know how to deal with the money right off the bat. Like, to most creators, it's like, yeah, okay, if you got a check for $100,000, what would you do with it? Like, would you invest it wisely, or would you, immediately spend it on a bunch of things to like kind of wrongly? Yeah, right. Yeah. And maybe you wouldn't have time to learn all that gear, and then you'd, end up in a situation that, would be, but, what was I saying? So, but I think that like a lot of people look at it that way, when I think just organically growing slowly, and then also being able to just say, I'm making a living off this when you reach that point, or even I'm making supplemental income off of this. And that's a very good thing. And I'm happy with that. I feel like some people just get a little bit too, I don't know. They look at content creation like there's a lottery ticket to be won or something, where that's just so rare, and it's never like, again, in music, even if you look at the cases of people where they got famous really fast, even in the highest, the ones who are the most successful, like Britney Spears, it's like, would you describe her as happy? You know, like in her entire life, would you describe her as somebody who, you know, I mean, the court system apparently doesn't think that she can even spend her own money. Like, that's how sad it is, you know? And so,
yeah. And also with those kind of like get rich quick models, it's usually years and years of work, even prior to that, that went into that moment that they ended up taking off. Because I know Lil Nas is like a great example of this. Like, everybody thought he came out of nowhere with one song. But he'd actually been creating songs and music and memes and blowing up on, you know, all the different social platforms like Twitter and SoundCloud for years prior. Yeah. Or been trying to, at least.
He's been paying $1 for a lottery ticket every day of his life and then finally won. Yeah. That's basically, that's how, and there's a whole massive, dare I say, multi-billion-dollar industry that exists just to lead artists or content creators or musicians to, you know, trade money for promotion, or, you know, for some sort of step up, or for some sort of industry secret. And I mean, it shows itself in like a new ugly way every day of my life. It's just constantly there. And I mean, it's even funny even on Instagram. Like, generally, so many of my messages that are, you know, in my other inbox or whatever, so many of my messages are people, just publicists, trying to get me a blue, like, verification star, whatever. And it's like, I don't care. Like, who cares? Yeah. Oh, they want like 30 grand. Like, those things go for so much money. Like, and they like set you, and people pay for it. And like, I know people who've done it, and it's like, why? Like, what does that actually accomplish in, like, yes, it would be very cool to like meet a girl and then have her find me on Instagram and see that I have a star, you know, like, I guess, but I'm also 42 years old, and, you know, but at the same time, it's like, what does that mean for like the people I communicate with, for the people who watch my channel, for the people who are inspired by it? Like, that almost is that sort of artificial step up that puts you on a different plane. And so it's kind of like, I don't want a star. I would like to stay level with everybody as long as possible. And I know one day I'm going to just get one, you know, like, I think that's how it works. I think if you just get enough followers, eventually you just end up with the star, or whatever it's called, the blue check. I don't even know what it is, but but I see that as like a big goal for a lot of creators, and they're worried about it. And it's like, who cares? It's just a blue icon.
Yeah, it is funny what people are aspiring towards, whether it's like, you know, social engagements, blue check marks, all these different goals that are set from, you know, content creators, especially in the music industry. I feel like, you know, there is a lot of pressure to get, you know, likes, views, engagement, that sort of stuff. But anyway, everybody listening, you heard it here from Ben. Start creating content. It takes a lot of time and effort, so start as early as possible. You know, definitely put the time into creating good content, finding your core, whether it's 100 or 800 or 1,000 people. Those are the ones who are going to be your ride or die. Even if you've got hundreds of thousands of followers, it really boils down to your core, really group of passionate followers, it sounds like.
At the end of the day, it's, you know, a musician who is a professional musician and on tour, and then when that musician is, you know, has free time to write music that's coming from his or her heart, is really no happier or less happy than a musician who waits tables at Red Lobster and comes home and writes music that is, you know. And the same thing for content creation, and same thing for science. You do what you really enjoy, and then just keep doing it. And if you create things, if you're a creative person who creates things, keep creating. Don't stop doing that, because it's the most beautiful gift that you can have. And you only have so many years in the world, so just keep creating. And it doesn't really matter. Like, all of the other things will come if you just keep creating, like in pretty much any scenario. But yeah, don't worry about the blue star.
Yeah.
Worry about
Don't worry about the blue star.
worry about finishing that thing that you've been, working on that you might not have enough confidence to get past.
Yeah. I think also not worry about it, but instead of focusing on the blue star, focus on talking to the people who are enjoying your content. It sounds like that was very successful for you as well.
Because they're really interesting people. Like it's a great way to open up conversations, and it's a great way to learn things. A lot of my most successful videos are literally just from people in my YouTube comments asking questions. Like, wow. And then you find out that the answer to that question is a really entertaining journey. So.
Awesome. Well, Ben, really, really appreciate the time. Where can we find out more about you? Where can we go check out, what you're up to? If we want to get in touch with you, give us the best contact info.
Generally, just I would say my YouTube and Patreon are probably where I upload the most meaningful content. I'm always, I tweet here and there on Twitter. Benn Jordan, Benn Jordan, 2 N's on the Ben. Instagram, that's probably a more daily. People who follow me on Instagram seem to think that I live like 1,000 miles from a major city, but I just live in a very wooded area north of Atlanta. So, because a lot of nature footage and animals and things like that. But yeah, generally the whole heap. If you just search my name, you'll eventually probably find something that you like.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're going to chuck all the links in the notes here as well. So don't forget to subscribe and let us know if you're enjoying these, what you like about them, what you don't like about them. Really appreciate all the listeners out there who are getting some value from this. And Ben, thank you so much. I think you've been so generous with your time, and it's really been super interesting learning about, how your thought process works, how you sort of go about your content creation, how you've made that your main gig. And you're kind of doing what you like to do, which is hard to say in today's world. It's like you're doing every day what you like to do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a gift to be able to do that. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey guys, we put a bunch of effort into making great content for this YouTube channel. So please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, hit like, and tell a few friends about it.